everyone, I'm Bia, and welcome back to Cardiac Radio for Teens. For those of you who may not know, Cardiac Radio for Teens is a place where teens can come together with other teens and learn about Spiritist teachings and topics every week, and learn something in a way that might actually apply to our lives now, because sometimes we read these books or we hear adults lecture, and it doesn't really make sense and think, oh, that was back in time, or that's for when I'm adult, that doesn't apply to me now. But a lot of this actually applies to us right now, and if we realize that, we'll be able to help ourselves evolve further along quicker. So last week we started off with a part of the book called The Choice of Trials, and this was in the section, the bigger chapter, it's called Spirit Life. So the choice of trials, we're talking about how in the spiritual world, how we choose what trials we want to face. We think, okay, in this next life, I want to be faced with this and this and this, so hopefully I can overcome it, and then I'll be perfect in that little area, and then I can move on to something else. Or maybe that's a step so I can become closer to perfect in that area. So we pick our trials, so that's what we're talking about here. And last week, we only started off reading the first question, so we'll pick up with the second question today. And if you did miss the first question last week, I highly suggest you go back, because it makes sense when it's everything together, instead of just bits and pieces. So let's get right to it. Question 259, where we left off. If our spirits choose the kind of trials we will undergo, are all the tribulations of life, therefore, foreseen and chosen by us? So basically the question is, that if we, our spirit, if we choose what kind of trials we want to face, oh, I want to do this and this and this, does that mean that everything happens in our life is basically our choice? And the spirits answered, not all of them, because it cannot be said that you have chosen and foreseen everything that will happen to you in the world, not even the smallest things. You have chosen the kinds of trials. The details are consequences of the position you have chosen, and frequently of your own actions. So right there, they're saying that we don't have complete control. It wasn't us that said, oh, I want exactly this and exactly this. We pick our trials, but how that trial is going to come to us depends on our actions and what we're doing and where we are in our lives. And then the spirits continue. If a spirit has been born among evildoers, for example, it might already know what kinds of temptations it would face, but it did not know how it would act in any given situation. So, if you were born among evildoers, you would know, okay, I'm supposed to overcome these temptations, but you wouldn't really know the exact situations you were going to be in and what kind of temptations you would have. You just knew that we're going to be temptations and you had to overcome that. Its actions are the product of its violent or free will. In choosing a particular path, a spirit knows when it will have to endure the struggles that arises thereon, and it knows the nature of the tribulations it will encounter. But it does not know what events await. The details spring from circumstances and the force of things. So right here they're saying how, okay, I'm going to be faced with this challenge, but when it's going to come, where it's going to come, maybe okay, I'm going to try and overcome my selfishness. But you just know that vague thing, and the details kind of depend on what you're doing and where you are in your life and how that's going to come to you, so you don't really know that specific, but you do know there will be this trial overall. Only the major events that will influence its destiny are foreseen. If you walk down a path full of ruts, you know you must be very cautious because you run the risk of tripping. But you do not know when you will trip, and maybe you will not trip at all if you are sufficiently on your guard. If you are walking down the sidewalk and a tile falls on your head, you must not think that it was written beforehand, as it is commonly said. So what they're saying is, it's not that every single step of your life was planned. You said, okay, on this day, on today, June 6th, I'm going to record this, and I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this. And it wasn't planned like that, but it was saying, okay, I'm going to have to overcome this. I'm going to have to learn more. I'm going to have to study the Spirit's book. Let's say one of our trials was to study the Spirit's book. So now here we are in this position where we're studying the Spirit's book, and we didn't pick, this is exactly through Kardec Ready for Teens, it was exactly how we were going to do this. But we did pick the general idea, and the details came into place in where we are in our lives and how the events occurred in our lives. Question 260. Why would a spirit want to be born among evildoers? The spirits answered, It has to be sent into the environment in which it can experience its requested trial. To this end, it must find an analogous situation. For example, in order to struggle against the instinct of thievery, it must dwell among thieves. So, what they're saying is, why would someone be in the spirit world and say, I definitely want to incarnate with those evildoers or those bad influencing people? They're going to say, I want to go be there. That's not anyone's first thought, we would think. But sometimes that's what's necessary for you to overcome it. Sometimes it's like, I want to be evil. I want to overcome poverty. Well, you have to live in poverty to be able to overcome it and to experience it and know what comes from being in that state of poverty. Or if you say, I would never be so selfish with a lot of wealth. But you have to actually be incarnated in that position so you can actually face those trials. So, like this one, that if you have to overcome your instinct to steal things, then you have to be born and to be in an area that you're going to be around thieves and you're going to be tempted to do this kind of stuff, because that's how you're going to really overcome this trial. And then there's the second part to this question, and it says, if there were no longer any evil individuals on earth, would spirits not be able to find the necessary conditions for certain trials? So, say, not that we're close yet, but if Earth had no more evil spirits or evil individuals, if there was no more of them, then would we not be able to overcome these certain trials? And the spirits answered, and would that be something to regret? That is what happens on highly evolved worlds, where evil has no access. Thus, only good spirits dwell on them. Use all your efforts to ensure that the same happens as soon as possible on your earth. So they're saying, basically the spirit said, wouldn't you be happy if that happened? If all the evil is gone, that would be a really great thing. And that's what happens on highly evolved worlds. So people who do have to go through these conditions of evil and suffering, it won't be on Earth. It'll be somewhere else because Earth no longer has that, which will be a very great time. Question 261. In the trials it has to undergo to reach perfection, must a spirit experience every type of temptation possible? In other words, will it have to go through all the circumstances that can trigger pride, jealousy, greed, lust, etc.? So they're saying, does that mean to become perfect you have to go through every single thing? So today it's going to be today, and maybe in this lives is going to be working on my pride, then my selfishness, then my greed. So you have to go through everything? And the spirits answered, of course not. You should be aware of the fact that there are those who from the beginning have taken a road that spare them many trials. But those who allow themselves to be led among the evil road risk all its dangers. For instance, a spirit may ask for wealth, and it will be given. Then, depending on its character, it may become greedy or wasteful, selfish or generous, and it may indulge in all the pleasures of sensuality. This, however, does not mean that it has to succumb to all those tendencies. So, right here they're saying that, no, we don't have to go through everything, because if you already kind of overcome it, if you're faced it, and you already overcome it, just the first step, just kind of without trying, then okay, you don't have to work on that. Or like they're saying that, okay, you're asking for your child to have wealth, which many people don't see as a trial, but it is actually a really big thing to have money. It's very difficult. So you're asking your trial is to be wealthy. So then you're going to be faced these things. You're going to be faced greed and selfishness or being generous, and you're going to choose what you do. So if you choose the right path, then you won't have to go in depth into greed and to selfishness. You already kind of overcame that, so you'll move on. So you don't have to have a real strong experience with each one. Question 262. How can a spirit who, at its origin, is simple, ignorant, and inexperienced, consciously choose an existence and be responsible for its choices? So they're saying that, how come if these, especially the lower level spirits, if they're very disadvanced and they're ignorant, they're simple, they don't have experience, how are you letting them choose what's going to happen in their lives? And the spirits answered, God compensates for its inexperience by outlining the path it should follow, as you do for a child from birth. However, as the spirit's free will develops, God gradually leaves it the freedom to choose its own way. It is at this point that the spirit will choose the wrong path if it does not listen to the advice of good spirits. This is what we may call the fall of man. So here what they're saying is that when they have no experience at all, just like babies, just like little children, God guides them like a parent guiding a child. They say, okay, this is what you have to do in your life to be good, to be successful. This is what you have to do. So it's like laid out. But as you go, so he sets you on the right path, just like a parent. A parent sets the child on the right path, but when they turn 18, when they turn 20, they're leaving. And then you have to make your own decisions. There's not the parents to guide you anymore. So that's kind of what happens. Once you have a little bit, you're on your way, you start your track in your life, then God's kind of going to back up so you have your free will to make your own choices and to go through all these trials. But of course, that doesn't mean that we're alone, because there still are the good spirits there guiding us, but it's more about our free will. We can't just be told exactly what to do every second of the day. Then there's the second part to this question, and it says, when a spirit enjoys its free will, does the choice of its next corporeal existence always depend solely on its own volition, or can it be imposed on the spirit by God's will as an expiation? So they're saying, the question is saying, so if a spirit is having its free will, so it's picking, everything it picks, is it always the spirit's free will, or is there some things that God kind of pushes them to do? The spirits answered, God knows how to wait. God never hastens expiations. Nevertheless, God can impose a certain existence on a spirit when, due to its impurity or ill will, it is not capable of determining what would be most useful. And when God sees that such an existence could serve for its purification and advancement, and at the same time its expiation. So what they're saying here is that God, he's patient. He's going to wait. If you're making the wrong choices, he'll guide you back, and then you have to try it again, and then he'll guide you back. He'll let you have your own free will until you learn to make the right choice, because it's not good enough for someone to sit there and tell you, okay, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to do, this is what you have to do. You have to be able to do it on your own, to not have any instructions, and to be able to do that from yourself, within yourself. So God knows how to wait, and he's not going to be pushing people to do things unless he sees that it's really taking a bad course and you really need some guidance. Then he'll kind of push you back. But most of the times that he'll just wait, because he knows what the right thing to do, but it's for us to learn. Question 263. Do spirits make their choices immediately after death? And the spirits answered, no, because many of them believe in eternal punishment. And as we have already told you, this in itself is a punishment. So the spirits, they don't choose immediately after death, because some of them, they're still in this concept that they're going to have this punishment. And maybe knowing that they did all these mistakes and they have to go back and make more trials, that might be another punishment for them. So they kind of, in their minds, it's another punishment for them. So they kind of have to take a break, calm down, recuperate, and be like, okay, now I'm ready to go back. So it's not immediately after death. Question 264. What guides a spirit in choosing the trials it wants to bear? So what helps you decide what you want to do? Because there's so many things. And the spirits answered, it chooses what may serve as an expiation according to the nature of its wrongs, and whatever might enable it to evolve more quickly. So usually the spirits, they choose something that's going to fix something wrong that they did. So if they did this mistake, they're going to be like, oh, I want to face this trial so I can fix that mistake and keep growing. Or it's something that will help them evolve quicker. Some spirits may impose a life of poverty and hardship on themselves in order to try and beat it with courage. Others may wish to experience the temptations of fortune and power, which are much more dangerous than poverty, because of the abuse and ill use that may be made of them, and because of this base passion they encourage. Still, others may desire to be tested in the struggles they will have to bear in the contract with various vices. So it's really up to the spirit and what they've done and they want to improve on right now. It's like if you see, looking back and you said, oh, I made this mistake, I want to fix that one. So they kind of pick what mistakes they want to learn from and how they want to grow. Question 265. If some spirits choose contact with vice as a trial, are there others who choose it out of affinity and the desire to live in surrounding that caters to their taste, or where they may give free reins to their materialistic tendencies? So the question is, basically it's saying, do some people choose basically to benefit themselves? Like they're not really thinking about improving themselves or evolving, but they're just thinking, oh, I want to have a good life and I want to have all the money, very materialistic tendencies. And the spirits answered, of course there are, but only among those whose moral sense is still underdeveloped. So yeah, some people do think that. They think, oh, I can evolve later. I want to come back and be wealthy and have this job and have a great time, blah, blah, blah. But that means that they're still morally underdeveloped and they still have a lot to grow. And the spirits continued, the trial derived from this, and they must endure it for a long time. Sooner or later, they will understand that satisfying their crude passions has deplored consequences, which they will have to endure for a period that will seem like an eternity. So, after all of this, after they keep doing just whatever they want, oh, I want this, they'll after have to pay for those consequences, and it's going to feel like an eternity for them to overcome those things. God may leave them in this state until they have understood their wrongs and then ask for the means of redeeming them through profitable trials. So God's going to keep them there until they realize that they made a mistake, and then they'll be on their way again to actually start evolving this time. Question 266. Wouldn't it be natural for a spirit to choose the least painful trial possible? So wouldn't you, if you knew, you wouldn't pick, oh, I want to suffer through losing my legs, or I want to suffer through losing a family member. You wouldn't choose those things. You would choose the things that would hurt you the least. And the spirits answered, for you, yes. For the spirit, no. Once it has freed itself from matter, illusion disappears and it thinks differently. So basically they're saying that right now for us, we think of as physical pain, and we're thinking of stuff that's painful to us, but in the spirit, looking back through, seeing that life is actually eternal and having that concept, that the spirits, they think differently. So they're not thinking the same way that, oh, it's least painful. They're thinking, I need to evolve. I need to work on myself to get better. And then Allan Kardec puts his own comment in, and he says, human beings, subject to the influence of carnal ideas on earth, only see the painful side of their trials. That is why it seems logical that they would choose those which, from their own point of view, may coexist with material pleasures. However, in the spirit life, they compare such crude and fleeting pleasures with the unchangeable happiness of what they get a glimpse. Then, of what importance are a few temporary hardships? So they're saying that the spirits realize they get a little glimpse that if they evolve and they get to that state of perfection, they're going to have eternal happiness. And unchangeable, always happy. So what's a few little hardships if they can have that? A spirit may therefore choose the hardest trial, and consequently the most painful experience, hoping to arrive at a better state more quickly. Just as a patient often chooses the nastiest medicine in order to be healed more quickly. Explorers who aspire to have their names linked to a discovery of an unknown country do not choose a course covered with flowers. They know the dangers they will have to face, and they also know the glory awaiting them if they succeed. So, the spirits, they aren't thinking of this as, they aren't thinking of it like us, like it's painful. They're thinking about forever. They're thinking about eternity. So they're thinking, if I can have unchangeable happiness in the future for the rest of eternity, then I can go through a few little hardships right now, because it's going to seem very quick in that looking back on it. So they'd rather have a hard trial and go through this so they can get closer and more evolved and get closer to that perfection state. And then he continues, the doctrine of freedom to choose our lives and the trials we must undergo ceases to seem unusual when we consider the fact that when spirits are disengaged from matter, they judge things differently than we do. They foresee the goal. The goal seems far more important than the fleeting pleasures of the world. After each existence, they see the steps they have already taken, and they understand what they yet lack in purity to reach the goal. That is the reason why they willingly submit to the vicissitudes of corporeal life, even requesting the ones that will help them arrive more quickly. Therefore, it should not be surprising to us that a spirit does not prefer a softer life. In its state of imperfection, it cannot enjoy life without suffering. It can only get a glimpse of the goal, and for reaching it, it seeks to improve itself. So the way that the spirit observes things is different than us. So they're not looking at just this life like we are. We're focused on just this life, just on these few years that we're going to be on this earth. But the spirit, they're focusing on eternity. They're focusing on, there's been so many lives, so what happens in this life? If they can improve themselves, that's all they're thinking about. They're thinking about the bigger picture. When here on earth, we're not looking that far ahead. Which we could, and we could realize that and try to improve ourselves now, because we're thinking about the bigger picture, not just what am I going to do in this one life. Then it continues, do we not see similar examples every day? Do individuals who work part of their life without rest or respite in order to accumulate what is necessary for their well-being perform a self-imposed task with a view to a better future? Do not soldiers who volunteer for a perilous mission, or explorers who confront dangers no less formidable in the interest of science or their own fortune, willingly submit themselves to trials that will bring them honor and profit if they overcome them? What will people not submit or expose them to for their own gain and glory? Are not all competitive examinations voluntary trials for improving in a chosen career? No one arrives at a highly important social position in the sciences, arts, or industry without going through a series of lower positions, which in themselves are other types of trials. Human life is thus a copy of spirit life. We find incidence of the latter in the former, only on a smaller scale. If during our time on earth we often choose the most difficult trials, with a view of evolving further, why would a spirit who sees even further down the road, and for whom earthly life is only a fleeting incident, not choose a painful and laborious existence, if it will lead it towards eternal happiness? Those who say that if they could choose their existence, they would ask to be princes or millionaires are like the nearsighted who cannot see what they touch. They are like gluttonous children who, when asked what they want to be when they grow up, they answer, a cake baker or a candy maker. So here again, they're just showing examples that even in examples in our lives, in our earthly lives, for this short amount of time, we see that some people, they push themselves to go through harder trials, but to overcome more stuff so that they can have the glory at the end of it. Or sometimes you take that AP class or that college class so that in college you don't have to take it, or that you'll be ahead of the game, or you're already a step ahead. So for your own benefit, you take that harder class. So, do I want to take just physics now and then have to take it again in college, or just take that challenge of taking college physics so you don't have to do it again? So you're pushing yourselves for that glory, for your own gain. So the same thing happens in the spiritual world, and you can see much further. And when you look, one life, it was like a blink of an eye. So, okay, I can do that again. I can go through this again. And people who, if they say, if I could be anything, I would be a millionaire, these people, they're not thinking outside of the box. They're not thinking so far in the future. They're just thinking of right here, right now, like if you ask a little kid what they want to be. So they're not thinking about their future. They're just thinking so close to them. But if we think about our future, we're always we take on harder challenges so that we can improve ourselves and get that better thing that we want. Then it continues. Likewise, hikers in the depths of a fog-obscured valley see neither the length nor breadth of their path, but upon reaching the top of the mountain, they behold the path they have traveled, and how far they still must travel, and the obstacles they still must overcome. Hence, they choose the surest means to reach their goal. Incarnated spirits are like hikers in the depths of the valley. When freed from earthly ties, it is as though they have reached the top of the mountain. For a hiker, the goal is rest after a wearisome trek. For the spirit, it is supreme happiness after its trials and tribulations. All spirits say that in the errant state they search, study, and observe in order to make their choices. Do we not have an example of this in our corporeal lives? Do we not often spend years searching for a career, which we end up choosing because we think of it to be suitable for our goals? If we fail at that one, we seek another. Each career we embrace is a phase, a period of our life. Do we not spend each day choosing what we will do tomorrow? So what are its different corporeal lives to a spirit except phases, periods, and days of its spirit life, which, as we know, is the normal one? The corporeal life is nothing more than a transitory and temporary life. So what they're saying here is that as we look at our life, as we think, next year I want to do this, or tomorrow I want to do this, the spirits, it's like our lives, our earthly lives, our corporeal lives, those are days for the spirits. When they are setting out their whole life, those are like days in earthly life. So they're thinking about all these together. It's just a phase. I tried that. Now I'm going to try this. Now I'm going to do that. So you study and you say, okay, I want to try and fix this now. And you go and you try it. And if you fail, then try again the next day. And for next day, for the spirits, might be next lives. But eventually we will get better and we'll move on and we'll evolve and we'll go on to the next trial. So that's where we leave off today. But before we leave off, I'd like to read our daily book of positive quotations for today's date, June 6th. Finding inspiration. You can't wait for inspiration. You have to go after it with a club. Some artists wait to be struck, like lightning, by inspiration, and then follow the inspiration wherever it leads. Others simply get up every day and go to work. They write until they've produced a certain number of words, or they draw until they've completed a certain number of sketches. These artists don't wait for inspiration. They work and work and work, and eventually, inspiration makes an appearance. I sometimes use lack of inspiration as an excuse for not doing things I love. Today I'm going to go ahead and do what I love and not wait to be inspired. If I have to, I'll make my own inspiration. I'm Bia. Thank you all for listening. This has been Kardec Radio for Teens. Thank you all for listening.